My name is Michael Anderson, the textbook definition of a workaholic architect. I pull in a seven-figure salary, but I live like a monk. My wife, Claire Winters, is notorious in our circle as the Ice Queen. We've been married for a year, living in the most luxurious penthouse in the city, but we're nothing more than glorified roommates. It was 2 a.m. I was in my study, poring over blueprints, when I heard the soft click of the electronic lock on the front door. I didn't look up. I knew it was Claire. She'd been out of state for a high-stakes meeting, closing a major deal. I heard her tired steps in the foyer, the sound of her heels sharp and distinct in the silent apartment, each click echoing with a cold exhaustion. A moment later, she appeared at the doorway of the study. "Still up?" she asked. Her voice was like a thin layer of frost, beautiful but radiating distance. I put down my pencil and looked up at her. "Waiting for you," I said. She was wearing a deep blue, silk shirt dress, perfectly tailored to trace a line that was somehow both austere and intensely alluring. The fabric was thin, and with the hallway light behind her, her entire silhouette was haloed in a translucent mist. She tilted her head slightly, her long, black hair disheveled from travel and spilling over her neck. She wore no makeup, but her skin was so pale it almost glowed. The line of her jaw was tight, her eyes holding a trace of weariness she couldn't quite hide. "Did you close it?" I asked. She walked over to my desk, a gold key card held between the index and middle fingers of her right hand, tapping it lightly on the wood surface. She had exquisitely beautiful hands, long, slender fingers with clean, rounded nails that gave off an air of untouchable elegance. "What do you think, Mr. Anderson?" she said with a faint smile. It was a shallow expression, like a brief flicker of sunlight on a snowbank, gone in an instant. "I left the contract there. I told Kevin to handle the follow-up." She placed the card by my hand, leaning forward slightly. The movement brought the clean scent of her perfume to me, mingled with the faint, almost imperceptible trace of alcohol. "You drank a lot tonight." I noted, my brow furrowing. She straightened up, her movements crisp and efficient. "It was business," she replied simply, her tone offering no room for explanation. I watched her, a tightness in my throat. We had always maintained this distant, dangerous equilibrium. We were husband and wife, but we had never truly been close. "Get some rest," I said. "I have a family dinner tomorrow. You need to be there." She arched a delicate eyebrow, a flash of annoyance in her eyes that she quickly suppressed. "The Anderson family's monthly drama? Fine. I know." With that, she turned and left. The hem of her blue dress cut a smooth arc behind her, like a crack forming on a sheet of ice. I picked up the key card. It was light, yet it carried the entire weight of our marriage. Ours was a merger, a business arrangement. She brought her talent, and I brought my name and resources. Love? That was a luxury for ordinary people. The next day was the regular Anderson family dinner, held at the family estate. The moment I walked in, I saw my younger uncle, Julian Vance, holding court on the main sofa, surrounded by a gaggle of admiring female cousins. Julian was 3 years younger than me, but generationally, he was my uncle. He wasn't in the business world. He was an artist with a wild, untamable streak and a face more striking than any movie star's. Those smiling, almond-shaped eyes of his always made you feel like he was born to be in the spotlight. He saw me and immediately stood up, pulling me into a warm hug. "Hey, my big nephew is back. Where's my aunt-in-law? Let me see if she's gotten even more ethereal lately." His voice had a lazy, magnetic quality that could instantly disarm anyone. "She's changing. She'll be down in a minute," I said, pushing him away, unaccustomed to his casual affection. I'd always thought Julian was the kind of person you could fall for too easily. He had a warm, unreserved vitality that was the exact opposite of everything I was. When Claire came downstairs, the living room fell silent for a beat. She had changed into a beige cashmere dress. High-necked, long-sleeved, it covered her from head to toe, completely concealing the allure of the previous night. But this only made her seem more coldly beautiful, an untouchable iceberg. She walked straight to my side and linked her arm through mine, a picture of seamless intimacy. This was Claire's greatest skill. In public, she was always the impeccable, aloof wife. I felt the chill from her fingertips, but no warmth in my own heart. "Julian, it's been a while," she said, nodding politely in his direction. Her tone as formal as if she were greeting a stranger. "Claire, you're being too formal." "What? After marrying Michael, you can't even call me by my name anymore." Julian's smile was loaded with meaning. My uncle's voice was teasing, but his eyes were locked on Claire. A flicker of irritation rose in me. I felt he was crossing a line. "Mr. Anderson is here. Naturally, I have to show him the proper respect," Claire replied with a flawless smile, batting the question back to me. I squeezed her hand, signaling that was enough. During dinner, my mother began her routine interrogation about grandchildren. Claire, dear, you and Michael have been married for a year now. When am I going to get to hold my grandbaby? And look at Julian. All he does is paint all day, doesn't even try to find a nice girlfriend. My mother hit two birds with one stone. Julian immediately threw his hands up in surrender. Mom, give me a break. I wouldn't dare hold a good woman back. Claire set down her fork, her expression placid, as if we were discussing the weather. Mom, we're not considering it right now. We're too busy with work, and Michael doesn't want to be tied down by a child so soon. She deflected the responsibility squarely onto me. My heart seized. Her words were half truth, half lie. Of course we weren't considering it. We'd never even had a real marital life. Julian suddenly interjected, his tone light, as if telling a joke. Now, that's not right, Claire. My nephew here has an old man's mentality. He has no idea how fun having kids is. I just finished a painting. The theme is future. It's a portrait of a pregnant woman. So beautiful. As he spoke, he let his gaze, full of an artist's aesthetic appreciation, sweep over Claire's flat stomach. The look sent a primal wave of discomfort through me. I tightened my grip on my water glass. That's enough out of you, I warned him coolly. Julian just shrugged and said no more, but the smirk lingering on his lips planted a seed of doubt in my mind. I noticed that Claire seemed quieter than usual today. Her hand remained linked with mine, her posture steady, but she was drinking water a little too frequently. I started to feel that something wasn't right. After the dinner, Claire and I drove home. The night was dark, the car filled only with the soft strains of jazz. You were quiet today, I said, breaking the silence. Tired. Your mother's nagging gives me a headache, Claire replied, her eyes closed as she leaned against the passenger seat, her voice a bit hoarse. I glanced at her, at the long, elegant line of her neck, looking so fragile and captivating in the dim light. You don't have to force yourself. I know dealing with all this is hard on you, I said, attempting a sliver of concern. She opened her eyes and stared out at the flashing neon lights, a hint of mockery in her gaze. Michael, we're husband and wife. This is my responsibility. You were quick to defend your uncle today, though. Couldn't stand a few of his little jokes. Her words stunned me. He's always been tactless. I was just reminding him. Is that right? I thought you were afraid I'd get bored of our penthouse and be lured away by his free-spirited, artistic charm. Her tone was calm, but her words stabbed into me like a knife. I slammed on the brakes, pulling the car to a screeching halt at the side of the road. Claire, what the hell is that supposed to mean? I kept my voice low, reining in my anger. She turned her head and met my gaze directly, her eyes cold and utterly fearless. It means that in this marriage, you got the stability you wanted, and I got the resources I wanted. We are perfect business partners. But even business partners should have a basic level of trust, I said, my voice heavy. She smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes, making it look painfully fake. Trust? Why should you trust me? You don't even touch me. After saying that, she pushed the car door open, got out, and walked toward the entrance of our apartment complex without a backward glance. I watched her straight, defiant back, the fire in my gut extinguished by her final words. She was the ice queen, but wasn't I just as cold a spectator? The next few days, we returned to our separate, busy lives. I started paying attention to Claire's movements, not out of love, but out of a sense of wounded pride. Her last words echoed in my mind like a curse. One night, on a whim, I opened her iPad. We had no secrets from each other, mostly because we weren't intimate enough to have any to share. I opened her photo gallery. There weren't many pictures, mostly architectural drafts and landscape shots. I swiped through them, and then my finger froze. It was a photo taken at the beach. In it, she was wearing a loose-fitting white button-down shirt, facing the ocean. Her profile was bathed in a soft, relaxed tenderness I had never seen before. And her hand was being held by someone else. I zoomed in frantically. The hand holding hers was large and masculine, with well-defined knuckles and a familiar tattoo on the wrist. That tattoo was the main motif from Julian's last art exhibition, an abstract bird in flight. An icy chill shot up from my feet to the crown of my head. My breathing grew ragged. I immediately checked the date the photo was taken. It was last month, during the same days she'd told me she was out of state closing that contract. My heart hammered against my ribs as I continued to scroll down. Sure enough, I found another one. This picture was taken at night, in a dimly lit bar. She was sitting in a corner booth, her head resting lightly on someone's shoulder. Though I couldn't see the man's face, I recognized the olive green jacket. It was the one Julian wore all the time. I kept searching like a madman until I found a folder titled, Our Sacred Union. The name made my pupils constrict. In my world, a phrase like that was loaded with an unspoken, intimate subtext. My hand trembled as I clicked on it. The folder was empty. Claire, you've got some nerve, I snarled under my breath. She deleted the contents, but she hadn't had time to delete the folder itself, nor the 2 photos left behind. It was evidence of her secret affair, irrefutable and deeply ironic. I didn't confront her immediately. I'm Michael Anderson, a rational, calculating businessman. Anger would only make me lose my leverage. I needed more proof. I started following her. Not like a stalker, but like a hunter. I discovered that every Wednesday afternoon, she had a standing appointment at a private, high-end spa. On Wednesday, I cleared my schedule and tailed her. She entered the spa, and I sat in my car, my eyes fixed on the heavy mahogany door. About 2 hours later, I saw a familiar figure exit from a side entrance. It was Julian. He wore a baseball cap and a casual hoodie, an art bag slung over his shoulder. He looked relaxed and carefree, as if he'd just finished a pleasant sketching session. He didn't see me. He walked to the corner, hailed a cab, and left. I waited for another 5 minutes before Claire emerged from the main entrance. Her face had that post-spa glow, rosy and relaxed. The Ice Queen's aura had softened slightly, like jade that had been steeped in warm water. She was looking down at her phone, the corner of her mouth twitching into a brief, sweet smile. It was a smile I had never once seen during our marriage. I felt an invisible hand twist my insides, a sharp, silent pain. They didn't leave together, but their simultaneous presence at a private club was enough to confirm everything. I decided it was time for a confrontation. That evening, I went home early. I waited for her in the living room without turning on lights. Only the moonlight filtered through the windows, casting everything in a cold, solemn glow. She returned at 10:30. Seeing me sitting in the darkness, she flinched, a flicker of panic crossing her cool eyes. You're home? I thought you had a dinner meeting. It ended early, I said, rising to my feet and walking toward her. My shadow fell over her. I saw her take an involuntary step back. Do you know where I was this afternoon? I asked calmly. She took her purse off her shoulder, her movements slightly stiff. I went to the spa. Michael, are you checking up on me? She lifted her chin, her frosty composure returning. The spa. I walked to the coffee table, picked up the iPad I had prepared, and woke the screen. I held the picture of her on the beach, her hand in his in front of her face. Was the spa masseur holding your hand, too? The moment she saw the photo, her face went white, her lips losing all their color. But it took her only 3 seconds to regain her composure. You went through my things? She shot back, deflecting instead of denying. Went through your things? Claire, this is our home, our shared property. I have a right to know about everything in it. Tell me, when did it start with Julian? I said his name, my voice laced with ice. Her body trembled slightly, but her gaze hardened, becoming almost defiant. How much did you see, Michael? Do you really think we need to keep up this act anymore? Our sacred union? I scoffed. How poetic. Calling an affair something so spiritual. She walked to the window and stood with her back to me, her voice low and tinged with a suppressed sense of grievance. That was just a joke. Our entire marriage has been a joke. You know it. From the day we got married, we were just business partners. I don't even have feelings for you as a friend. Her honesty was a dull knife, twisting slowly in my gut. But I'm your husband. I roared. No, you're not. You're the eldest son of the Anderson family, and I'm the heiress of the Winters Corporation. That's all. Our argument instantly escalated into a cold war. She didn't move out, but she moved into the guest room. She continued to leave for work on time every day, meticulously professional, as if nothing had happened. I was a caged animal, torn by conflict. I should have filed for divorce immediately, but I couldn't let go of the relationship, or rather, I couldn't let go of my pride and public image. I began to wonder just how deep a relationship with Julian went. The fact that he was my uncle made the entire situation feel grotesque and humiliating. One afternoon, while she was out, I slipped into the guest room. I didn't find anything incriminating, except for a small pill bottle tucked away in one of her drawers. It was a bottle of birth control pills. My heart sank into a black abyss. If she and I had never been together, who were those pills for? That discovery shattered the last of my composure. I opened my iPad again and found a photo from the beach. I suddenly remembered that for the past 6 months, Julian had frequently claimed to be traveling abroad for artistic inspiration. Were his destinations the same as Claire's business trips? I started scrolling through Julian's Instagram feed. It was lively and full of an artist's casual flair, landscapes, paintings, exhibitions, and a few photos with friends. I scrolled back, post by post, until I reached one from 3 months ago. It was a picture of him from behind, sitting on a seaside rock, sketching. Next to him lay a woman's sun hat. I recognized that hat. It was the one I had given Claire for her birthday last year. My fingers clenched so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't some secret affair. They were practically flaunting it. I screenshotted the Instagram post and sent it to Julian, along with a picture of them holding hands. I added only one word: explain. Less than a minute later, he replied. It was just an emoji, a smiley face wearing sunglasses, smug and knowing. I was so furious I wanted to smash my phone. I called him. He picked up almost immediately. Mr. Anderson, sending me pictures like this in the middle of the day? Isn't that a bit inappropriate? His voice had its usual breezy tone. Cut the crap, Julian. Tell me, how far have you and Claire gone? I kept my voice low, afraid the household staff would overhear. He was silent for a beat, and then his tone turned serious. Nephew, do you really want to know? Obviously. All right then. He sighed. It's exactly what you think. What we have is real love. It's not like your business arrangement. Real love? She's her nephew's wife. She's my wife. My voice rose in spite of myself. She's a person first with the right to be loved. Can you honestly say that what you two have is love? Ask yourself that. His words were a bucket of ice water, shocking me into clarity. He was right. What right did I have to be indignant? I barely even touched her hand. Divorce. Tell her to divorce me. I won't let her walk away with a single penny, I said coldly. Julian laughed, a sound full of mockery. No, nephew. We won't be getting a divorce. You're about to find out that you can't get one. He hung up. I didn't know what he meant, but I felt a massive conspiracy closing in on me. I went back to the living room and found that Claire was already home. She was in the kitchen, expertly making coffee. She wore a simple house dress, her long hair tied back loosely with a silk ribbon. In that moment, she looked more like a real wife than ever before. Michael, the coffee's ready. Didn't you need to look over some blueprints? I'll get them for you, she said calmly. I strode over and grabbed her by the arm. Claire, what the hell are you playing at? Are you and my uncle trying to team up and force me out? She winced in pain, but didn't struggle, simply looking at me with those quiet eyes. That hurts, Michael, she said softly. I let go, seeing the 5 red marks my fingers had left on her pale skin. Tell me, what are you and Julian planning? He said I can't divorce you. What did he mean? I demanded. She picked up her coffee mug, blowing gently on the steam. He wasn't lying. You really can't. Why not? She set the mug down, her eyes filled with a complex mix of helplessness and pain, but not a shred of love. She raised a hand and gently, deliberately, placed it on her lower stomach. Because I'm pregnant, Michael. Claire's words were a bolt of lightning that struck me down, leaving me charred and hollow. What? What did you just say? I could feel my voice trembling. I'm pregnant. For weeks. I just found out, she said with terrifying calm, as if she were discussing the day's weather. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the table behind me. The coffee in the mug sloshed, nearly spilling over. That's impossible. I denied sharply. We've never. My words died in my throat. Since we were married, we had only been intimate once, after a drunken night. Right after that, she had left for her business trip. I had always assumed it was a one-time accident, an episode to be forgotten. Have you forgotten the night you were drunk, Michael? Her tone was laced with sarcasm. You were like an animal that night, completely out of control. Your strength was terrifying. I tried to remember, but my mind was a chaotic haze. I had been blackout drunk that night. When I woke up, I was in bed, and she was sitting by the window in her pajamas, reading a book. There was no trace of anything unusual on her face. She was as serene as if nothing had happened. So whose is it? I stared directly into her eyes, my self-control stretched to its absolute limit. Michael, that's a hurtful question, she said with a frown. Hurtful? You're having an affair with my uncle, and you have the gall to ask me if my words are hurtful? Tell me, is the child mine, or is it Julian's? She fell silent. For the first time, a flicker of struggle and pain appeared in those icy eyes. It doesn't concern you, Michael. You won't touch this child. You can't afford the pressure the Anderson family would put on you. I want a paternity test, I said, enunciating every word. She suddenly laughed, a hollow, almost tragic sound. Fine, I agree. But before that, you have to do something for me. Claire's demand was simple, yet it sent a chill down my spine. Are you insane? I looked at her, incredulous. She wanted me to help her close one final project, a project that would require me to leverage every resource I had. Only then would she cooperate with a paternity test. Michael, I know you hate me, but this project is critical to me and to the Winters family. It's the final stepping stone for me to get a seat on the board. You're using the baby to blackmail me? It's not blackmail. It's a transaction, she corrected. You help me finish the project, and I'll cooperate with the test. Then we get a divorce. If you can prove the child isn't yours, you can throw me out without a cent and reclaim all your precious dignity. I stared at her, her perfect face a mask of calculation and ambition. And if the child is mine? I asked. A complex light flickered in her eyes. If the child is yours, I'll have it, and we will continue this marriage. You would never allow the first grandchild of the Anderson family to be raised outside of it. She had me completely figured out, from my personal psychology to the rigid rules of my family. In that moment, I understood. She was never a sycophant or a gold digger. She was a highly intelligent predator. I agree, I said, but you have to promise me that you will not see Julian again during this time. Deal. She extended her hand. I didn't take it. The very thought made me sick. I started helping her with the project. It was an incredibly thorny engineering deal, touching upon many of my family's gray area business practices. I discovered that at work, Claire truly was an ice queen. She was calm, efficient, and her command of the project was breathtaking. One night, we were in my study discussing the plans. She was wearing a form-fitting silk nightgown with a long knit cardigan thrown over it. Her hair was down, and she pinched the bridge of her nose with her fingers. The exhaustion softened her sharp edges, making her seem almost vulnerable. Michael, the legal loophole in this contract is in Section 3. You have to get someone to fix it, or we'll be bogged down for months, she said. She came to stand behind me, leaning over to point at my computer screen. Her breath brushed against my ear, carrying that familiar, faint perfume. I could feel the rise and fall of her chest, the soft knit of her cardigan brushing against my back. My entire body went rigid. I had to admit, even at the peak of my anger, her appeal was lethal. You can't do it yourself? My voice came out hoarse. She straightened up and stepped back. Her face was etched with fatigue, but her eyes were still sharp. I don't have the right connections. Only you can. I looked at her, a war of desire and hatred raging within me. Claire, you really are a piece of work, I sneered. She merely gave me a cool glance, not a hint of anger in her expression. Michael, we're two of kind. I'm after fame and fortune, and you're after your pristine reputation. We're cut from the same cloth. Her words, once again, left me speechless. The project moved quickly. With her powerful execution and my family's resources, we operated like a well-oiled machine, steamrolling every obstacle. During this time, I noticed Claire's appetite had vanished. She was often nauseous. One day, she was violently ill in a bathroom. I stood outside the door, listening to her painful retching, a confusing mix of emotions churning inside me. Is this my child? If it is, then all this suffering she's enduring is because of me. If it isn't, then she's a vicious woman, carrying her lover's child while exploiting me for her own gain. I suddenly remembered Julian's words. You're about to find out that you can't get one. He knew she was pregnant all along. Had they both been laughing at me, the useless husband, this whole time? I pulled out my phone and dialed Julian's number. You knew about the baby, didn't you? I asked without preamble. I did, he answered candidly. Why didn't you stop her? Why would I? She's the one that got away. What we have is real, he said, his voice rising. You don't love her, Michael. You just love the status and power she brings you. I love her. I love all of her, including her ambition. His honesty was humiliating. I suddenly realized that in this marriage, I was the sycophant desperately clinging to a hollow title and position. Do you know she's pregnant? If the child isn't mine, what's your plan? Julian went silent. It was the first time I had ever heard him hesitate. She's getting a paternity test. If it's not yours, I'll marry her. You. I was too furious to speak. No need to be angry, nephew. You get your project, she gets her freedom, and I get the love of my life. Everybody wins. He hung up. I stared out the window, feeling like I was trapped in an absurd, nightmarish play. The project was finally completed. Claire successfully secured her seat on the board. That night at the celebration dinner, she wore a little black dress and was absolutely radiant, a proud black swan. I stood in a corner, watching her navigate the crowd with ease, schmoozing with industry titans. Her gaze was sharp, her presence commanding. She saw me and walked over, a glass of juice in her hand. Mr. Anderson, a pleasure doing business with you, she said, raising her glass. Can we get the test now? I asked coldly. She set her juice down, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. We can, but are you sure you're ready for the answer? I've been ready for a long time. Fine. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, at the hospital. With that, she turned and walked away. Her back was as straight and resolute as ever, without a trace of hesitation. Watching her leave, a sudden wave of anxiety washed over me. She was too calm, so calm that it felt like she was holding a card I didn't even know was in play. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital. Claire was already waiting. She was wearing a loose-fitting sweater that hid her stomach, but the slight curve of her baby bump was still visible. "You're here," she said, nodding at me. "Let's go." I didn't want to waste time on pleasantries. We walked in silence to the OB/GYN clinic. When she lay down on the examination table, my heart suddenly tightened. It was the first time we had ever shared a connection this intimate, however clinical. As the doctor took the sample, my palms were slick with sweat. "Now, we wait 7 days," the doctor said. Outside the hospital, I looked at Claire. "Why don't you just get rid of it?" I asked, the ugliest question in my heart finally spilling out. She stopped and turned to face me, her eyes flaring with pain and fury. "Michael, how dare you say that? No matter who the father is, this is a life." It was the first time I had ever seen such a strong emotional outburst from her. Her voice was raw, and her eyes were red-rimmed. "And do you have any respect for it? Carrying it while you're having an affair with my uncle." "Enough," she yelled, a tear finally breaking free and rolling down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand, transforming back into the Ice Queen. "When the results come out, I'll give you an explanation. Go home and wait." She hailed a cab and left. I stood on the sidewalk, watching her car disappear, my mind a chaotic mess. The 7 days of waiting felt like 7 years. I couldn't work, couldn't think. My mind was consumed with the image of Claire's tear-streaked face and Julian's words. "I love all of her, including her ambition." I started to wonder, do I really love Claire? I loved her beauty, her competence, her cool demeanor, and the challenge she presented. But I had never loved her as a person, her vulnerabilities, her grievances, her dreams. I was beginning to understand Julian. He loved and hated freely, daring to break all the rules. And I was just an old man, trapped by convention. I secretly went to Julian's art studio. It was messy, but filled with a creative energy. On the wall hung an unfinished oil painting. It was the back of a woman. She was wearing that same deep blue silk shirt dress, her back to the sun. The curve of her hips was faintly visible under the fabric, exuding a mature, feminine voluptuousness. Even from behind, I knew it was Claire. Julian had painted her with such life and allure, a perfect match for the muse he described. My heart turned to ice. Their connection was real, and it was deep. I sat in Julian's studio and lit a cigarette. I called Claire. "Where are you?" I asked. At the office, her voice was steady. "When you and Julian were having your sacred union, did you ever spare a thought for me, your husband?" My voice dripped with sarcasm. There was silence on the other end. "Michael, can you please not be so crude?" she finally said. "Crude? Is what you did not crude. You and your lover, carrying on an affair practically under my nose, and you're telling me my words are crude?" "It wasn't in our home," she suddenly insisted. "What's the difference?" "It makes a huge difference. Michael, I admit I wronged you, but can you leave me with a shred of dignity? Do you deserve any?" She took a deep breath, her tone turning glacial. "Fine, you win. I admit it. I love Julian. From the day we got married, I knew I loved him." "Why?" "Because you're too cold, Michael. You're like a stone that can't be warmed." "But Julian, he makes me feel real emotions." I hung up. I couldn't bear to hear any more. On the 7th day, the results were ready. I went to the hospital alone to pick up the file. My hands were shaking so badly I didn't dare open it. I was terrified of seeing that name, Julian Vance. I sat on a bench outside the hospital for a long time, until the setting sun stretched my shadow long and thin across the pavement. I finally summoned the courage to open the file. Paternity test result. Comparison sample. Michael Anderson. Result of paternity exclusion. Not excluded. Not excluded. My mind went completely blank. The child was mine. This sudden reversal caught me completely off guard. I thought I had all the evidence, that I could file for divorce on my own terms and reclaim my pride. But now this child bound me, Claire, and Julian together in an unbreakable knot. I stared at the words on the report, and the hatred and pain in my heart were bizarrely replaced by a wave of manic joy. This was my bloodline. This was the child my Ice Queen wife was carrying for me. I started laughing, a wild, unhinged sound. I immediately called Claire. "The results are in," I said calmly. "I know. It's yours, isn't it?" Her voice was soft, laced with exhaustion. "How did you know?" "Because that night you were drunk, you called out my name. When you were on top of me, you lost control. You kept whispering, 'Claire, I can't take it anymore.'" My face burned. I had revealed my deepest desires to her in a drunken stupor. "Then how do you explain your affair with Julian?" I clutched the report tightly. "Michael, calm down. I'm on my way to the penthouse now. There are some things you need to hear from me in person." I got home, and she was already there, sitting on the sofa with a stack of documents on the coffee table. She saw me and gestured to the report in my hand. Now, let's talk about this child. He's yours. What are you going to do? She asked. I threw the report on the table and walked toward her. I want you to cut off all contact with Julian, and then you will move back into the master bedroom and be my wife. My tone was non-negotiable. She looked up, her eyes full of irony. Cut off contact? Michael, do you think Julian and I were just playing around? We were acting. Acting? For who? Claire took a deep breath, her gaze a whirlwind of complex emotions. For your Uncle Robert, and for my grandfather. She pointed to the documents on the table. Open them. Those are the transaction records between my father and your uncle. I snatched the file and began to read. The contents were shocking. My uncle, Robert Anderson, had been plotting with the Winters family to usurp the power my father held in the company. In return, the Winters family needed Anderson resources to cover a massive financial deficit. My marriage to Claire was a deal struck between the two families to create a fragile balance of power. I married you to gain access to the Anderson family's resources. But at the same time, your Uncle Robert had people watching us constantly. He needed to ensure that our marriage was purely for show and, preferably, childless. And Julian? I asked. Julian is the man I had a crush on for years in college. He's also Robert's adopted son. What? My head was spinning. He's not your biological uncle. He's the son your Uncle Robert adopted. He was placed by my side from a young age, tasked with monitoring me for Robert, and, if necessary, getting another woman pregnant to create a scandal that would completely destroy our marriage. Why would he do Robert's bidding? Because Robert saved his life. Julian is nothing but his loyal lapdog. Her voice was flat. I was completely stunned by the reversal. So, Julian wasn't my uncle, just a pawn planted by Robert to be a third party in my marriage. So your affair, it was fake. Half real, half fake, Claire said with a bitter smile. I did love him, but I knew his heart belonged to Robert's orders. All his affection, all his intimacy, it was all to gather evidence and create a scandal. The photo at the beach, him holding your hand. He knew we were being followed. He deliberately created those clues for you, leaving them in a deleted album he knew you'd find. He wanted you to be the one to file for divorce. Why didn't he just tell you? Why not force the issue? He couldn't. He had to follow Robert's orders. He was a better actor than me. He even got me that bottle of birth control pills and told me to take care of it myself, just to make you believe it. I thought of that pill bottle, and a chill ran through me. Julian was that ruthless. But you didn't take them, I said, looking at her swelling abdomen. No, that night, after you got drunk. What you said to me, it made me hesitate. Her expression was complicated. I saw your vulnerability, Michael. I suddenly felt that we were both just two people trapped in a cage. So you risked Robert finding out and carry my child? Yes. This child is our only leverage. As long as the child is an Anderson, Robert won't dare to make a reckless move. Does Julian know the child is mine? No. I told him it was his. He's trying to figure out a way to get Robert to approach me directly now. My mind was in turmoil. I thought I was the victim, only to find out I was the pawn being protected in the middle of the game. So your feelings for him, were they fake? I asked again. She looked down, a hint of undeniable pain in her voice. Michael, all the intimacy between us was an act, but my feelings for him weren't. He was my dream, the one that got away. But a dream, in the end, is just an illusion. I walked over to her and reached out, gently touching her cheek. Her skin was cool like fine jade. Claire, you're far more complex than I ever imagined. And you're far simpler, she said with a sad smile. What do we do now? I asked. She looked up, her eyes resolute. Since the child is yours, we see the act through to the end. We work together and take down your uncle. I started planning a counterattack with Claire. We were finally a real team, allies with a common enemy. I told my father everything about Julian's true identity. When he heard it, his face turned ashen. He never imagined his own brother would stoop so low. Michael, you did the right thing. For now, you and Claire need to appear closer than ever. Let Robert lower his guard, my father instructed. I returned to the penthouse and saw Claire in the living room, reading through some documents. My father wants us to cultivate a deeper connection, I said evenly. She looked up, a warning in her eyes. Michael, this is a partnership. Don't push it. You are my aloof, beautiful wife, and the mother of my child. We have to make it look convincing. I walked over and took the papers from her hand. Her skin smelled faintly of milk. Michael, you. I leaned down and gently kissed her forehead. This is for the child and for the Anderson family. You wanted power, didn't you? I'll give it to you. Her body stiffened for a moment, but she didn't pull away. Her eyes were a storm of complex emotions. Anger, frustration, but mostly a deep sense of helplessness. From that day on, we moved back into the master bedroom. Our relationship became even more nuanced. In public, we were the perfect, loving couple. I took her to every event, and she was always the most stunning ice queen in the room. She would wear gowns with high slits that perfectly showcased the lines of her body, capturing everyone's attention. At home, we were tense allies. We slept in the same bed, but under separate blankets. I tried my best to play the part of a good husband, preparing supplements for her and tending to her pregnancy moods. One time, I was in the kitchen making her some broth. She came up from behind and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Michael, thank you," she whispered. My body went rigid, but I didn't move. "Don't thank me. It's my duty as the child's father," I said, my tone distant. She released her grip, a flash of hurt in her eyes. "Michael, you're still so cold." "You know saying yourself, Claire," I retorted. I turned around and saw the tears welling in her eyes. "I just want you to know, I'm not a gold digger. I was just trying to survive." Our counter-offensive began. Using the evidence Claire had provided, I started systematically dismantling my uncle's power base. Julian began to grow uneasy. He called me, his voice probing. "Nephew, your relationship with your lovely wife seems to be progressing quite nicely," he said. "It is. Having a child changes things. We're having a real sacred union now," I said, deliberately using the phrase to provoke him. The other end of the line went silent. "Don't forget what you promised me," he said. "What did I promise you?" I feigned ignorance. "That you would divorce her and give her to me," he said, his voice rising. "Divorce? I have a child on the way, Julian. Do you really think I would give up my child and my inheritance for the one that got away?" He was speechless. "Claire, that two-faced bitch," he suddenly yelled. "Who are you talking about?" I snapped. "Don't think I don't know. She's carrying your child now. She's using you. So what if she is? She uses me. I use her. We're husband and wife. And you? You're just a lapdog being used by my uncle." I hung up, a sick sense of satisfaction washing over me. For the first time in this entire battle, I had the upper hand. My Uncle Robert could no longer sit back. He called me and asked to meet at a private club. I went alone. He was sitting in a private karaoke room, a bottle of red wine on the table in front of him. "Michael, you've been crossing some lines lately," he said with a smile, but his eyes were like chips of ice. "Uncle, what are you talking about?" I feigned composure. "The child in your pretty wife's belly. Do you have any idea who the real father is?" he asked directly. "It's mine. I had a paternity test done." I took out the report and placed it on the table. Robert picked it up and read it carefully, his expression growing darker by the second. "Impossible. Julian told me the child was his." "He lied to you, Uncle. He lied to protect me," I said. Robert slammed his wine glass on the floor, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. "Claire, that gold-digging whore. She dared to lie to me." "Uncle, calm down. She's your nephew's wife now. Don't you touch her," I warned him. "Touch her? I'll show you right now what happens when you cross me." I walked out of the club, my heart pounding with fear. My uncle had finally shown his true colors. I immediately called Claire. "Robert knows. He's coming after you," I said frantically. "I know. Michael, get home now. He's not after me. He's after you." I hung up and sped home. On the way, my car suddenly veered out of control, careening toward the median. My mind went blank as everything happened in a flash. A car crash. I slammed on the brakes, and the car screeched to a halt on the shoulder. My heart was racing. It was a close call. Someone had tampered with my tires. I immediately sent Claire a text. "I'm okay. Wait for me at home." When I got back to the penthouse, Claire was sitting in the living room, holding a stack of files. The moment she saw me, she rushed over and threw her arms around me, holding on tight. "Michael, are you okay?" "I heard the news," she said, her voice choked with tears. My body was stiff. This was the first time she had ever hugged me willingly. "I'm fine. Don't be afraid," I said, gently patting her back. Claire let go and pulled me to the sofa. "Michael, I've organized all the evidence. Everything we have on your uncle is right here." I looked at the files in her hands, but my mind was stuck on her hug. Was that genuine emotion, or was it just part of the act? "Michael, look at me." She suddenly cupped my face in her hands, forcing me to meet her eyes. Her own were filled with tears and worry. "Michael, listen to me. I love you. I've fallen in love with you. While you were taking care of me all this time, I realized that you're the one I could depend on for the rest of my life." I was stunned. I thought I had misheard her. "You love me? I thought you loved Julian." I love the idea of Julian. That was a schoolgirl fantasy. He's too free. So free that he has no sense of responsibility. But you, Michael, you have responsibility. You have integrity. You're a good husband. She reached out and gently touched my stomach. We're a real couple now. I leaned down and kissed her. The kiss was tinged with bitterness, but mostly with the relief of a survivor. Together, we brought my uncle down. Julian was cast aside by Robert. He called me one last time. Nephew, you won. You got the girl, the child, the entire Anderson legacy, he said, his voice hollow with defeat. Julian, you should be glad the child is mine. Otherwise, your master would have forced her to have an abortion, I said. I know. That's why I never intended for her to get pregnant in the first place. Then why the birth control pills? They were fakes. I knew she wouldn't take them anyway. My heart skipped a beat. Julian, he had been protecting her in his own twisted way. Julian, do you love her? I do. That's why I chose to let her go. She deserves a complete family. He hung up. I looked out the window, a storm of emotions raging inside me. 3 months later, Claire's baby bump was prominent. She had quit her job to focus on the pregnancy. Our relationship had completely transformed. She was no longer the ice queen. She had become gentle and caring. I bought a breast pump and started stocking up on baby supplies. 1 year later, our son was born. He looked just like me, but he had Claire's eyes, clear and bright. I stepped down as CEO, handing the company back to my father. I moved with Claire and our son to a villa outside the city. I was no longer a trapped old man. I was a real husband, a father. Julian became our son's favorite uncle. He visited often and painted countless portraits of the boy. One day, he was holding our son and said to Claire, "This ice queen of yours has turned into such a warm mother." Claire smiled, a look of pure happiness on her face. I looked at them, my heart full of gratitude. Our life was simple and happy. I started learning how to cook, making all of Claire's postpartum recovery meals. She would always laugh at my clumsy attempts. Our love wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, steady stream. One night, I was reading in my study when Claire walked in, wearing a silk robe. She came over to me and slowly untied the belt. "Michael, I've missed you," she purred, her voice husky. Her body was fuller now from nursing, her curves more pronounced. The body language beneath her robe was a clear invitation. I put down my book and went to her, wrapping her in my arms. "Claire, you're not much of an ice queen these days," I whispered. She smiled, a scent like sweet milk clinging to her. "Only with you." I lowered my head and kissed her. It was a kiss full of love and passion. Our true, deep connection was only just beginning. "I can't take it anymore," I growled. She whispered in my ear, "Losing control, my dear husband?" She stood on her tiptoes and gently bit my earlobe. Here, in our home, we had finally found real love. We were no longer business partners. We were a real husband and wife. The end.